Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh to all participants. Thank you so much for the time that you spend to go through with this program, short course program, Introduction to Social Sciences, Human Sciences. So Assalamualaikum to all and welcome to the class. So I will be resuming this session on the topic of science of the soul. Okay, let me share the Okay, so can it be seen? The slides? Okay. Okay, so I will resume what my colleagues presented before, and as a recap, my colleagues presented on the fact that we are offering an alternative perspective on understanding about human being. So I think she defined, she gives the definition. She gave the definition of psychology at the very beginning, when psychology is being defined as the knowledge of soul, and then it shifted into the knowledge of mind, and then it shifted into the contemporary definition of psychology, which is the study of human behavior and mental processes. Right, so from this shift, we can clearly see that the focus of the discipline of psychology from the very beginning has shifted into into the study of human behavior and mental processes. So when the definition shifted from the study or information or knowledge about the soul, shifted to the study of human behavior and mental processes, so it seems to be that certain important or pertinent parts of the human being is being left out. So as of now, we are looking into the Quranic perspective of human being, right? Quranic perspective of human being. And the topic that I will be delivering is the nature of man, or who is man. So this is the effort of the Department of Psychology to uphold the perspective, the Quranic perspective. All right, we are looking into the Quranic fresh perspective of the Quran to understand who is man. Okay, so we term a specific course is being introduced in the undergraduate curriculum of the department, Science of the Soul. This Science of the Soul is a direct translation from the Arabic terminology of Al-Mannas. Okay, so that is the situation as of now, and then we will look into the conception of who is man. So what I will be presenting after this are Quranic verses that highlight the very nature of man, and then further explication on the very nature of man will be deliberated. Okay, so based on the chapter 76, ayah 1 to 3. Okay, ayah 1 to 3. Okay, so Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Hal ata 'ala al-insani hinun min ad-dahri lam yakun shay'an madhkura. Suratul Insan. This is the translation, and then there will be a deliberation on the translation and on the meaning. Is there not a period of time when each human is nothing yet worth mentioning? So this is giving us some kind of understanding, alright, that Allah brought man into the existence after he was not even a thing worth mentioning. So this is to describe the lowliness level of man, and as well as the weaknesses. So this is actually at the very beginning. This is how human being is being created. There was a time before coming into the world that man was a non-existent being, although we are known to God. Right, the next verse is Inna khalaqnal insana min nutfatin amshajin nabtalihi faja'alnahu sami'an basira. So for indeed, we alone created humans from a drop of mixed fluid in order to test them, so we make them hear and see. So it seems to be that this is the material aspects of man, whereby we are created in this manner and then we are made to be able to hear and see. So this shows the capacity of man, what we are able to do. Alright, so this is like more explanation, the mixture of male and female gametes which form the zygote after fertilization. So we gave him the faculties of hearing and sight, so that he would be able to use them for obedience and disobedience. Okay, so the faculties of hearing and sight is being given to us. And then with that faculty somehow, so we will be tested to see whether or not we will be able to obey or we disobey, right, the rulings that Allah have given to us. So this is practically the description. Right, the next, the last one, Inna hadaynahu sabila imma shakiran wa imma kafura. We already showed them the way, whether they choose to be grateful or ungrateful. So meaning that Allah had explained to us, made it clear to us and showed to us, this is some kind of a decree, right? A decree. And it depends on men on whether they want to be happy, right? They want to state their be thankful, or whether or not they want to be ungrateful. So practically it gives us some kind of understanding of the nature of man. There are choices that we can make, right, with the capacity being given to us. There are choices that we are able to make, right? But then the choices is given after we have been given certain capacities. Okay, so that is one of the description given by Allah in the Quranic verses with regards to man, the nature of man. And then if we look into chapter 32, verse 7 until 9, so this further deliberate the very nature of man, right, when the word tin is being used. Allazi ahsana kulla shay'in khalqa wa bada'a khalqal insana min tin. Right, so the definition, the translation of the word tin is clay, who has perfected everything he created, and he originated the creation of humankind from clay. So the further deliberation of this ayah or verse, he created the father of mankind, Adam, from clay. So that is the starting point of the creation of mankind. So this should be our understanding. Right, and then the next verse, it is mentioned, Summa ja'ala naslahu min sulalatin min ma'in mahid. Then he made his offspring from semen of despised water. So the deliberation of this ayah, reproduction of human being will happen in this fashion, right? From a nutfah which comes from the loins of men and from between the ribs of women. Right, so starting point, the creation of man from clay, but the reproduction happens in this manner. Right, and then there are a couple of words that we can pay attention to in the next verse. ثُمَّ سَوَّاهُ وَنَفَخَ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِهِ وَجَعَلَ لَكُمُ السَّمْعَ وَالْأَبْصَارَ وَالْأَفْئِدَةَ قَلِيلًا مَا تَشْكُرُونَ. Let's look at the translation first. Then he fashioned him in due proportion. Right? ثُمَّ سَوَّاهُ. He fashioned him in due proportion. Means when he created Adam from clay, he created him and gave him shape and made him upright. And then the next sentence, وَنَفَخَ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِهِ, and breathed into him the soul. The word ruh here is translated into the word soul. And he gave you hearing, sight, and the sense of deduction. وَجَعَلَ لَكُمُ السَّمْعَ وَالْأَبْصَارَ وَالْأَفْئِدَةَ. And He made you to have as-sam'a, hearing, al-absar, sight, wal-af'idah, the sense of deduction. Al-af'idah literally is translated into heart, fu'ad. Right, so here it gives us a connotation that the sense of deduction, sense of reasoning, right, sense of reasoning is connected to the word heart, not the word brain. Okay, so that is the situation of by which human being is being created. Okay, so here وَجَعَلَ لَكُمُ السَّمْعَ وَالْأَبْصَارَ وَالْأَفْئِدَةَ. He gave you hearing, sight, and the sense of deduction, meaning that the sense of deduction here means reasoning, enabling men to draw some valid inferences. So we are given the capacity to reason. Based on the hearing capacity, observing capacity, we will be able to do reasoning. So practically these are the characteristics of man, how we are being created. Alright, and then the last one, قَلِيلًا مَا تَشْكُرُونَ. Lil is the thanks you give, means for this strength with which Allah has provided you, the one who is truly blessed is the one who uses them to worship and obey his Lord. May He be exalted with and glorified. Okay, so again, the verse stated some kind of choices being given. Alright, some kind of choices being given. The starting point of the creation of man from thin, and then the process of reproduction of man. And then the fact that man is being created in a complete form, right? In a complete form, that is these spiritual substances being given, right? Being bestowed upon man. وَنَفَخَ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِهِ. And then there is also capacity, certain types of capacity based on our sensory organs. We listen, we see, right? And we are able to use the sense of reasoning, right? The sense of reasoning. With these capacity, still there are alternative or opportunities being given, whether we want to obey, whether we want to disobey, whether we want to worship Allah or we go astray. Right? So these are the situation described of man. Right. So practically, I'm referring the content of these slides. I'm referring to a couple of references written by a prolific professor, Professor Syed Muhammad Naqib Al-Atas. This is the summarization of his book, what he is trying to deliver about the very nature of man. So, with regards to the Quranic verses being presented just now, this is the summarization of the very nature of man. So it seems to be that when man is being described as being made from clay initially, so that is a material context of man. When Allah breathed His ruh into man, there is also an immaterial aspects of man. Okay, so recapping on the day whereby we have Professor Dr. Omar Hassan Kasuli describing about psychology, he mentioned about the dual entity or dual nature of man. Alright, so this is the summarization of the very nature of man. Man is a single entity with a dual nature who is at once both physical and spiritual. Right, so that is the summary of the very nature of man. If we look into the Western perspective of man, they tend to focus, or they tend to put the perspective of man only on the physical side. They disregard the spiritual aspects of man. That is why the Western perspective is incomplete in a sense. Although they are trying to look into the inner side of man, for example, the newest approach of perspective in psychology, the positive psychology perspective, for example, is trying to look into the positive aspects of man. But they still lack the complete or comprehensive spirituality nature of man. Okay, so this is how we look into man, and this is how we should understand man. So it is a single entity but with a dual nature, which is at once both physical and spiritual. So in other words, we are of a physical or material entity. We are also non-physical or immaterial entity. Right. So these two entities will be integrating themselves to produce who we are, a complete man. Right. So the integration of these two entities will build a third entity, a complete man. In psychology, there is a school of thoughts known as Gestalt psychology, G-E-S-T-A-L-T, Gestalt psychology. So Gestalt psychology has a paradigm, and the paradigm is stated in this statement: the whole is not equal to the sum of parts. Meaning that the parts is there, they will be retaining their nature, their exact nature, but then when they combine together, they produce another comprehensive entity. So that is how man is being described. Man is actually the integration of the two entities, both the material or physical and the non-physical or the immaterial entity, but we are a complete, unique human being at the very end, right? Because of the integration of the two entities, physical, material, and the non-physical, immaterial entity. So this is how we should understand man. Right, and this is what is lacking in the contemporary mainstream psychology. Okay, just to strengthen our understanding of the nature of man, so this is actually more complete. Chapter 23, verse 12 until 14. وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ مِنْ سُلَالَةٍ مِنْ طِينٍ ثم جعلناه نطفة في قرار مكين ثم خلقنا النطفة علقة فخلقنا العلقة مضغة فخلقنا المضغة عظاما فكسونا العظام لحما ثم أنشأناه خلقا آخر. Right, so the word فَتَبَارَكَ اللَّهُ أَحْسَنُ الْخَالِقِينَ. So the word that I want to stress here is this word خَلْقًا آخر. So this is to certify the fact that man is the combination of both the material and immaterial thing. But the integration of both the material and immaterial thing create us a complete and a very complete man, right? The man, the we that we are assuming ourselves as now. Alright, so this is the translation, and indeed we created humankind from an extract of clay, then placed each human as a sperm drop in a secure place, then we developed the drop into a clinging clot, then developed the clot into a lump of flesh, then developed the lump into bones, then clothed the bones with flesh, then we brought it into being as a new creation. خَلْقًا آخر. So blessed is Allah, the best of creators. Okay, so this is the summary. Individual souls becomes, I can't see actually. Okay, so this is the summary from all the verses that I presented before. So individual souls become associated with individual bodies in the wombs of their mothers. So at the very beginning, we exist in the form of spiritual entity, the soul itself. And then when we are placed into our mother's womb, somehow we associate, the individual souls become associated with individual bodies in the wombs of their mothers. And then they merge into a single being as a new creation. Right? So man has to be understood as neither soul nor body, nor is he a composite of the two. So man is a third entity constituted out of the two. Okay, so that is the conclusion, or that is the summarization of a man. Okay. I usually use this example, or it can be other example. Say for example, we take, this is actually an example that I use. So this is the material being an egg, alright, material, the shell itself. We can touch it. It comes in the form of concrete, right, concrete entity. So inside the shell, what we have, the albumin, the white egg, the egg white, and then the yolk. Right, so this is actually the starting point of the material entity, and then if it is incubated somehow, this is actually the entity out of this combination, right? Out of this combination. Or we can use other example. For example, if we look at water, for example, water, it's at the basis of its atom base build. For example, what does water consist of? Hydrogen and oxygen. Hydrogen and oxygen has its own nature. They are actually flammable, right? They are actually flammable. So that is the very nature when they exist on their own. Hydrogen and oxygen, they are flammable. But then when they are combined into two and integrated, consolidated, what appears is water. Right? What appears is water, and a new creation out of the original entity. Right? So that's how we should look into man and the conception of man as the third new creation. Khalaqan akhar, the new creation, the third entity, a complete being. Okay, there is also this description of man. Man is being described as rational animal. Alright, so the Arabic term for rational animal is hayawanun natiq. Alright, so we will delve into this explanation now. So the word rational here, the Arabic word is natiq. It comes from the root word of nataqa. Nataqa is articulated speech, right? So man is being given this capacity, all right, this capacity of using speech. All right. So with regards to animal, right? Animal, the word is hayawan, animal. But I would rather we not understood it from that perspective of animal as animal. So the root word is hay, an organized being infused with a vital spirit, right? So just to differentiate, man not as animal or beast. So we consider man is not an animal, but rather a living being. Okay, so in conclusion, hayawanun natiq is translated into the living being that speaks, right? The living being that speaks. When we talk about the living being that speaks, given the capacity to articulate speech, it gives a connection to the fact that man has cognitive faculty, right? Man has cognitive faculty. So speech issues forth from the word nataqa, nutq, the root of language inherent in cognitive faculty of the soul. When we talk about using language, articulated speech, the capability of us using language, when we have the capability of using language, so it gives us a connection that there is indeed a cognitive faculty of our being, of our soul. We have cognitive faculty. Alright, so the soul is then described as nafsun natiqah, the word nafs, right, labeled as the articulate soul. Right, so this is how we look into men when we use the word hayawanun natiq as in explaining who is man. I would rather use the word nafs, nafsun natiqah. Okay, and then we look into chapter 7, verse 172. There are lots of things going on in this verse actually. We'll look into the Arabic version first. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. وَإِذْ أَخَذَ رَبُّكَ مِنْ بَنِي آدَمَ مِنْ ظُهُورِهِمْ ذُرِّيَّتَهُمْ وَأَشْهَدَهُمْ عَلَى أَنفُسِهِمْ أَلَسْتُ بِرَبِّكُمْ قَالُوا بَلَى شَهِدْنَا أَنْ تَقُولُوا يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ إِنَّا كُنَّا عَنْ هَذَا غَافِلِينَ. Okay, so this is the translation. And recall, O Prophet, when your Lord brought forth descendants from the loins of the sons of Adam and made them witnesses against their own self, asking them, am I not the Lord? They said, yes, we do testify. We did so lest we claim on the day of resurrection. We were unaware of this. Right. So this ayah is giving us some kind of understanding that there is a covenant. Sometimes this ayah this verse is known as the covenant of Alastu. Right? The covenant of Alastu. Alastu bi rabbikum qalu bala shahidna. The question that Allah posed on us, am I not your Lord? They say, yes, we do testify. Bala shahidna. Right? So the footnote here is the explanation of the verse. So the preceding verse actually, there is another verse before this, which is verse 171. Allah described about a covenant between Him with the Bani Israel, right? Bani Israel. But 172 is a covenant being made by Allah with Bani Adam. So it is the preceding discourse concluded with the note that God made the Israelites enter into a covenant with their Lord. In the following passage, all men are told that a covenant with God is not the exclusive privilege of the Israel. In fact, all human beings are bound in covenant with God, and a day will come when they will make to answer how well they were able to observe the covenant. So this is another nature of man being stressed by Allah. We are in covenant with Him. Right? We are in covenant with Him, and our covenant will be all the time subscribing to the fact that we are being created by Allah. So that is our very nature, right? So we will have a intermittent covenant being described at the very beginning before we are even born into the world. We exist in the form of soul. Right? We are alam arwah. We exist in form of soul. We made a covenant, agreeing with our with our God, with Allah, that we are supposed to be born into the world. But now, when we are already have the capacity, we have our body, material body as our vehicle. Again, another covenant is being created so that we remember. Right? So that is another nature of man. At all time, our very nature has to be connected with our Creator. Right, so that is another nature of man. So at the very beginning, we discussed about the build-up of man. We are built up of the material entity. We are also built up of the immaterial entity. And these two entities combine together to create a complete us, a complete me, and a complete you. Right, and then the very nature of man, we are always in covenant with Allah. Right, this is a remembrance given to us that whatever that is that we do, whatever it is, the way we think, the way we behave, has to be aligned with the fact that at the end of the day, we subscribe to the principles given to us by Allah. So that is our very nature. Right, it is our fitrah. Okay, there are lots of things here actually, a description or more deliberation, right? More deliberation of this verse, right? Of this verse. The thing that I want to point out here is from this ayah, we should understand it in a way that we are endowed with both existence and consciousness. Based on our own existence, the material entity that we have in us, alright, the immaterial entity that we have in us, the consciousness, we realize, we are alert, we are aware of things that happen around us, right? So when we were both endowed, with both existence and consciousness, what shall we do? We have to become the witness to Allah's Lordship. That is the very nature. Okay? Alright. And then we are granted human form and we are given the faculty of speech. Right? Based on this capacity, we are made to enter into a covenant. Right? Into a covenant. And then we are made to witness against ourselves. So this is the very nature. So when we look into this realm of Quranic verse, so we know that there are certain amanah given to us, certain responsibilities that we have to fulfill after we are created in the exact form of who we are now, right? So we have to understand the fact that our existence, we have the consciousness that should be used in order for us to become a witness to Allah's Lordship. Okay, so that is again the very nature of man. Okay, now conclusion. The soul definitely knows its Lord, right? So from the previous verses that we have read, so we should understand that it's fitrah in us. Our soul has to know Allah, the Creator. The soul knows itself as His creatures. Right? We should know that Allah is our Creator and we are His creatures. Right? So with that understanding, so there will come in the fact that we have to be witness to our own self. We have to feel certain responsibilities. Our action, the build-up of our personality has to be tied at the end of the day. What can be done as Muslim, as abid to our Creator. Our soul also knows the other soul as distinct from itself, right? So that is another thing. We realize about who we are. Right? We realize about who we are. We know that we are distinct from other creation. And the soul, with the capacity being given, the capacity of listening, the capacity of observing, seeing things, using our sensory organs, for example. So our soul will know how to discriminate between what is right and what is wrong. We are able to discriminate and we are able to make distinction. So these are all the capacities. And also the soul possesses power to apprehend what knowledge communicates. So anything, any information that comes to us, for example, with the faculty that we have, the fact that we can listen, the fact that we can see, the fact that we can comprehend things cognitively, we are able to use language, articulated speech capacity, so we will be able to comprehend what knowledge communicates. Alright, so the soul is also able to communicate what it apprehends because of our capacity being an articulated speech entity, having the faculty of articulated speech. Right, so man is the living being who speaks with soul that has cognitive and articulate power. Okay. So how can the cognitive and articulate power of the soul apprehend the meaning of the universals, the meaning of things around us, the meaning of us ourselves? Alright, this is what we do by involving in the act of judgment and discrimination, distinction and clarification. So this is what known as the faculty of our rationality. Okay, so please, while I am presenting, if you have questions, you definitely can ask me right up. And then still conclusion, right? Because we have the we have to exercise the cognitive power and the articulate power with justice. When we are given certain capacity, we are given the capacity to see, to observe. We are given the capacity to do reasoning, right? Indicative of the fact that we have cognitive power. Right, so we have to exercise the cognitive power and the articulate power with justice. Alright, so Allah does not left us as that. I give you the capacity, therefore you just do whatever you do. No, Allah teaches us a lot more. Right, Allah teaches man the science of al-bayan. Right, what is the science of al-bayan or al-bayan? So the art of science of eloquence. Right, is the way we express meaning with different words and methods. We have this capacity. Allah teach us this the art or science of eloquence. So when we talk about this ilmu bayan, the art or science of eloquence, how we express meaning, right? We express meaning using different words and different methods. People use different words, people use different methods in order for them to deliver what they want to, the ideas, the notion, the expression or the perception they have in them. Alright. So this capacity of expression of the unseen inner reality, this capacity is the expression of the unseen inner reality known as akal. Right? Known as akal. Okay, so what is akal? We define it as intellect. Right? It is an act of grasping, withholding, or binding objects of knowledge by means of words and identifies their meaning and proper places in a systems of relation. So that is the akal. Alright, so it is a capacity, this capacity is the expression of the unseen inner reality known as akal. Okay, now I'm going to shift into this. Right, so if you look into the description of man, in the Quranic verses, there are a couple of terms being used. Akal, ruh, nafs, and qalb. Okay, so now we are looking into the very nature of these four entities. So these are the faculties that we have as a human being, as a complete human being created by Allah. So we have all of these entities in us. We have the entity of akal, we have the capacity, we have the entity of ruh, we have the entity of nafs and qalb. Literally, the translation of akal is intellect. Right? Ruh is considered as the spirit, nafs is the soul, and heart is the qalb. Alright. Looking into all these four entities, they can be categorized as either spiritual substance or they are the entity that is associated with the governance of the physical nature of man. Okay, so they are a spiritual substance. Let's look into the akal. Akal is considered as spiritual substance. Ruh, definitely the spirit of man, spiritual substance. Nafs is also a spiritual substance, and qalb is both spiritual and material substance. Because of what? Material substance, qalb referred to an organ. It is actually an organ, a physical organ that regulates the circulation of blood throughout the body. Right, so meaning that qalb is also considered as spiritual. It has this division of spiritual nature in the qalb. Alright, and it is also a material substance. So all four entities that we have, qalb, nafs, ruh, aql, we have these four entities has its own spiritual substances, and also it is associated with the governance of the physical nature of man. Okay, now let's look into, just now I described about qalb. It is a spiritual substance, that is a spiritual entity establishment of the qalb, and qalb is also a material substance, right? It is an organ that regulates the circulation of blood throughout the body. Okay, now when we look into aql, it is a spiritual substance. In terms of physical nature, how aql is connected to the governance of the physical nature of man. So it is the reasoning power of mind associated with the brain. That is how we look into the aql, the entity of aql, and how it governs the physical nature of man. So it is the reasoning power of the mind associated with the brain. The physical structure is the brain, right? But the reasoning power of the mind is that of aql. All right, it is associated with the brain. As for the ruh, right? So the ruh is actually the spirit of man. So this entity of ruh carries the amana, the trust of the vicegerency. At the end of the day, we should understand that we are the khalifa, right? In this world, we are abid to our creator. So in terms of spiritual, in terms of its spiritual rule over the body, it is known as nafs, or the soul of man. As an organ of spiritual perception, it is called the qalb. As cognitive and articulate power, it is called an aql. Right? How is it associated with the governance of the physical nature of man? It is the generator of biological life. Without ruh, we are no longer living. Okay, so that's how we should look into this entity: aql, ruh, nafs, and qalb. Each of these entities is indeed spiritual substances, but they also have association with the governance of physical nature of man. Okay. So here, the ruh has many identified characteristics and its many modes in relations with the various levels of existence, with the both spiritual and physical. The ruh is always in act, engaged at once in its many modes, right? Just like what I mentioned here. Ruh, in terms of its spiritual rule over the body, it is known as nafs, the individual man, or the soul of a man. Ruh is as an organ of spiritual perception, it is called the qalb. As cognitive and articulate power, it is called an aql. Right, so that's how we should understand these four entities. Nafs, qalb, and aql are not mere names signifying different modes of the ruh, but they have having no reality of their own. The difference in the meaning of their names indicates their specific and individual realities. They are powers and faculties of the ruh. They are the attributes in relation to the essence. Okay? Alright. So here, I want to bring your attention to the word term insan and bashar. Right? Insan and bashar. Okay, I have 1 more minute. So insan, this is what known as insan, the complete man. Right? The I, the me, and the ye. So this is called al-akhar. We can divide it into, in other words, we can divide it into two. Nafsun natiqa, man's spiritual agent, the rational soul, the real agent of man's moral and ethical acts and behavior, operating through its cognitive and active powers in the insaniya aspects of man. So now the word insan can be referred to as representing nafsun natiqa. Whereas another division, nafsul hayawaniya, the physical vital soul, man's biological nature, his physical life, shape and construction, his bodily origin. This is what known as bashar. Right, so nafsul hayawaniyah, the other term is, we can refer it to bashar, nafsul natiqah, insan. Okay. Last bit. What I want to direct your attention is that contemporarily, right, this is not something new. Man is being described as in the category of Homo, H-O-M-O. Right, so we have Homo economicus, Homo legalis, Homo sapiens, right? But I would like to drag your attention into understanding man as not within the classification of Homo. We would rather see man as classified as the Quranic Adam. Okay, so now the issue is the word Adam, the name Adam. People claim that it is not a proper name, but a general name for mankind, kind of a prototype of man. So they use the word Adam to refer to prototype of man. But if they use the word Adam to refer to prototype of man, so the issue is that what is the initial point of the beginning of the mankind? Alright, we want to look into man as the Quranic Adam. Alright, Quranic Adam. We are not into the categorization of the Homo classification of man. Alright, Homo classification of man is a theory of evolution of man. Man evolved. Right, man evolved from one particular shape into another shape via the natural selection scheme. Right, so we don't want to have that kind of conception. Man is Adam is a proper name, the starting point of the mankind. Right, it is not a name that should be used to refer to mankind in general. It is not a name that refer to a prototype of man, right? So we should be subscribing to the context of Quranic Adam. Adam is a real man, a name being given to our prophet Adam at the very beginning. So we do not subscribe ourselves to the theory of evolution of man, that the Homo sapien categorization of man. Okay, all right. So I think that's it. I've exceeded the time, 2 minutes. Thank you so much for your attention to this lecture. So I hope you can get some kind of benefit in understanding a much more detailed perspective of man, overcoming, not subscribing to that many instances of man as what the mainstream discipline is talking about. Okay, thank you so much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.